everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Play, Pause, Rewind. We're back. It's been 2 weeks yet again, and yeah,
Woo.
that's it. But if you're new from the TikToks, welcome to the show. Glad to have you here. Glad you found us. Niles, how have you been the last 2 weeks since our previous episode?
Been all right. I've been hanging in there. I feel like I've been watching a lot of stuff and just consuming a lot of media. Like my girlfriend and I, we've just been binging The Last of Us, and now we're all caught up. And God, I don't think I've cried that much in a single weekend in a very long time. But
yeah, every episode has like one part that'll make you cry. So you're caught up through last night's episode too?
I still need to watch that one.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, we're up like through the 6 episodes, and man, it's got a lot of gut punches, but it's well worth the watch. But yeah, it's been an all right time the past 2 weeks. How about you, Dylan? How have you been?
Pretty good. And on the note of The Last of Us, if you are listening to our show and have not caught up to The Last of Us yet, you should, because that's our next episode after this.
Yeah.
So get caught up. It's a great show. Spoiler for our episode, but I've been pretty good. Not doing a whole lot. I worked on upgrading my PC, which was a terrifying experience. Where I accidentally had it basically bricked for 3 days. So,
oh no.
It turns out I had screwed the CPU heatsink on too tight, which meant that it just wouldn't do anything. I fixed that. And then I was stuck on, I learned something new. I learned about the BIOS screen, BIOS. And I learned that USB keyboards and mice don't really work in the BIOS that much. So I had to buy it's called a USB to PS/2 adapter. And I guess it converts it to an analog signal into the computer. Good thing I have those ports on my computer. Otherwise, all I had to do was press either Y or N, yes or no, on this menu, and then my system booted up. But I couldn't do that for 3 days.
Oh my gosh.
But it works now. So
yeah, whatever. I mean, it's recording, so that's fantastic. It's a step in the right direction.
We've got an hour or something to go. But yeah, that's us for the week, and we are back on the Marvel Cinematic Universe train with this episode as we are talking about Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania, the third film in the Ant-Man mini series, I guess, within the broader series of the MCU. Yeah. I refuse to call any of these series trilogies or individual series because they are not.
Yes. Yeah.
But yeah, in this movie, we see Scott Lang sort of post-Endgame resting on his laurels a little bit. But he and his daughter and the Pym clan are all sucked into the quantum realm, where they have to deal with a new adversary for them, but a familiar one for us, Kang the Conqueror. Directed by Peyton Reed and written by Jeff Loveness, starring once again Paul Rudd, Evangeline Lilly, Michelle Pfeiffer, Michael Douglas, and Corey Stoll, with the additions of Catherine Newton and Jonathan Majors and Bill Murray. Niles, non-spoilers to start with, but what were your thoughts about Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania?
Overall, I'm fairly positive, I would say, on this. And before we really dive into much too, like you said, it's the third film in the Ant-Man series. One thing that I thought was just mind-blowing, this is the 31st film of the MCU. 31 films.
Yeah, that is a lot.
Oh my god, that's too much. It's so much, but I mean, it's good, and it's the first film of Phase 5 as well. So
yes,
we're finally transitioning out of Phase 4. And now we're on to Phase 5, and we got a bunch of things ahead of us to come. But yeah, I feel like for the most part, I'm fairly positive on this. I have some critiques of the film, some areas where I feel like it kind of felt short. I feel like I've seen a lot of people really laying into this film, unfortunately, and we'll probably hit along some of those similar beats along the way here. But I feel like overall it maintained a lot of that quirkiness and the humor from the previous Ant-Man films. It still kind of had a little bit of that going on its own, but then there was like just some points where it just kind of fell apart a little bit. What about you?
Yeah, one quick note before my thoughts on the film. I did want to mention that Emma Furman, the actress who played Cassie Lang, Scott's daughter,
Oh yes.
in Avengers Endgame, she found out that the role was recast and given to Catherine Newton via social media the same time we found out.
What?
Yeah, which I think that's really fucked up.
That's
And
shitty.
it's awful. And I don't know why they wouldn't tell her, but Marvel really should attempt to make this right and cast her as someone in this franchise going forward, because like that's like dangling a massive career opportunity in front of someone and then snatching it away without warning. It's pretty mean.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
but that aside, and I don't blame Catherine Newton for this or anything. I think she's great and it's not her fucking fault. She just took a
Oh,
job.
absolutely.
But worth noting that Marvel did that for some reason. But my general thoughts on the film, I, like you, am more positive than negative, but I think a lot of people are rightfully getting irritated with the MCU's usual failings, mostly in the visuals department. And
Mhm.
we're going to talk about that in just a second in a little bit more detail as to why this film is suffering in the visuals as much as it is. But
Yeah.
I I thought this movie was pretty fun for the most part. I like the characters, I like the new environment and setting, I like the villain. I think the jokes landed for the most part, and it also did have some heart that I thought was there, but visuals really dragged it down, and these are blockbuster movies. They should not be dragged down by visuals, you know.
Yes. Yeah, it is kind of weird as a movie because, Quantumania, the
Mhm.
idea of going into this quantum realm, which we saw in the previous Ant-Man film. Yeah, I think we very briefly were down there to
Yeah.
rescue Janet or whatever,
Mhm.
bring her back to the surface. It was, it just showed that like there is infinite possibility down here. Like this is a whole new world. Like it's, you could be very visually appealing and do all sorts of cool stuff with the VFX down here.
Mhm.
But yeah, I think there were some really good visuals. I will say that. I think that some of them were really well produced, but I think that's just kind of like a lump sum. I think there's some moments throughout the film where the quality really does drop, unfortunately.
Yes, and I would say there are a lot of really creative visual ideas here, and
Hmm.
nothing is distractingly fake looking, but I would say in terms of composition and color palette, it leaves a lot to be desired. It's like they could have designed this world to look like anything, and for some reason it's very brown. It just
Yes.
seems like an odd choice. Uh, but the quantum realm itself, which we're going to talk more about in spoilers, is a very has like very fertile ground for world building and storytelling potential here. But
Hmm.
let's see. I want to talk about the VFX a little bit
Yeah.
because some VFX artists who worked on this film and have worked on Marvel films in the past have anonymously come out and basically said they agree the film looks kind of bad. And the
Mm.
reason they have given for that is that a lot of resources during post production of this film were moved to post production of Black Panther Wakanda Forever. So they basically stripped a lot of the team away to prioritize that movie. And also, Marvel was apparently changing a lot of the later half of the film on the fly and sending multiple conflicting requests, which
Mm.
the end result of that is that the VFX artists do not have enough time to do a really good job, which results in some of these muddied or generic visuals that we see, especially in the latter half of this movie. Uh, and we've talked about this a lot with Marvel, right? But this is a problem that would not exist if they went back to spreading out their releases a little bit more, which does seem to be coming. I've seen multiple reports saying that they are adjusting their cadence because that I think it's finally catching up with them. This movie has apparently one of the biggest, if not the biggest, week one to week two box office drops in the comic book movie genre
Oh,
ever.
really? Hmm.
Yeah. Or at least in the MCU. So that is what they need as a wake up call, the financial one.
Yes.
But
Yeah.
the VFX artists have been expressing frustration because they know the money is there. It's
Hmm.
Disney and Marvel. They're huge. And it seems like they've said, quote, that they are constricting quality to focus on quantity, which is something we talked
Yeah.
about a lot as well, which is disappointing because it really lets this film down and lets the setting it takes place in down, which both had potential to be really excellent, I think.
Yeah, no, that's such a shame to hear those pieces of news there, because I wasn't aware of all that stuff, especially the anonymous statements. And I mean, yeah, you're right. When you look at the latter half of the film, it does kind of start to get kind of a bit of a clusterfuck. There's a lot going on the screen, and we'll talk about it too. But like the tone shifts, like a lot of things move really quick. The pacing is off, and so yeah, that you can kind of, I think, now that you said that, it really does kind of highlight why the ending, or a reason why the ending kind of looks the way it does.
Yes.
So yeah, that is disappointing. And I mean, I did, after this movie, when we were preparing the show notes, I was looking ahead to the future, because this was the first film of Phase 5. So I was like, okay, what is the cadence for Phase 5? And it does seem like you were saying, things are very spread out now. There's not as many projects.
They've recently moved projects back. Like even the Marvels was moved back from, I think, May to November, which
oh wow, yeah, that's a big shift.
Which is good. This is objectively a good thing that's happening.
Yes.
And I think I'm not gonna like kneel to Bob Iger or anything, because he's a capitalist profit-seeking CEO like the rest of them, but he has returned to Disney after a couple years of Bob Chapek, and just based on the loose impression I get, Bob Iger takes a longer road, I guess. Like he is better able to recognize like, oh, profits, but profits over long term, where it seemed like Chapek was like, we need projects now. I've never heard a good thing about Bob Chapek, so hopefully I'd like to see them change course, because I like these movies, and we're kind of like dunking on it a little bit, but both of us again liked this movie. It's just the problems with this franchise are becoming more and more apparent, and they are bothering people to a greater degree. So
yes, yeah, and I would say that my issues with the MCU are less so much more on the visual side of things. I think it's more on like the narratives and the characters, like how they're developing some of these characters. And we'll get into that in a little bit more here too, but like I just think that like sometimes with these characters, they just kind of drop the ball with like the introduction, or like the narrative is a little too formulaic, or it's like, we've seen these tropes a million times before. Is there something new you can give us? Is there something new that like you can kind of spin this a different way and everything like that? But yeah, I mean, I think everyone's kind of got the same superhero fatigue a little bit too. And I mean, that's such a common term that we're throwing around these days, because it is such a colloquial thing. Like there's far too many superhero films, and I mean, a lot of them are great and I enjoy them, and there's a lot of this good content, but when everything is so similar, it reduces the impact of each piece.
I think James Gunn going over to DC is going to give Marvel a lot of incentive to up their game more than they have had to in a long time, because the DC universe has been floundering for a pretty long time, and I have not seen anything from James Gunn that would indicate that he will do a poor job doing this, and the projects he's announced seem very interesting. So I think once that kicks into gear with Superman Legacy, like Marvel is going to really step it up, otherwise, because they'll have to. But but again, like I feel, especially comparing this film to Thor: Love and Thunder, which we both also had a good time with, but I think has a lot of issues as well. This one manages not to undercut its earnest moments with bad jokes. It has jokes, but the jokes, one, are funny, and two, are in appropriate places. I think, remember in Love and Thunder how there would be like a great potential for a really dramatic or emotional scene, and then they just do a shitty improv joke. And this movie doesn't do that, and I really appreciated that. And the Ant-Man trilogy as a whole are pretty decent action comedies within this broader franchise, I think, and this continues that trend. But again, the MCU's usual shortcomings are here. Hopefully they start to correct that. They now have a financial indicator that they need to. So that's good. But I liked the cast. I liked the returning and new characters, and I liked the setting a lot. So
yeah, I would agree. And I think a lot of the cast I do enjoy, and I think honestly the best part of this movie that delivered in a lot of respects for me was Kang, Jonathan Majors. He's such a phenomenal actor. Like, I think he gives such great he's got such gravitas in this role, such power. Like, he brings so much to it, and like, he doesn't even do that much. Like,
no, he doesn't.
But I mean,
there's a lot of build up to him that I think
yes,
works to build anticipation for seeing him. And I agree, he's great. He's a lot of fun.
Yeah, I think he's the best part of the movie. And I know this isn't like his big reveal, because we already got a little bit of him in Loki. He was, the prime,
the He Who Remains.
Yes, the He Who Remains, the antagonist, like the long one who's in the way in the back. You don't see him until the final episode. So I think that this movie, it feels like it's served as like his big reveal, his big introduction here, because not everyone, I think, is going to go watch Loki. Not everyone's going to go watch all the series and everything like that. So they needed to have this film, especially if they're going to have Kang, this, Jonathan Majors, back for subsequent films and everything like that. So I think, this movie, did a good job overall, as like just introducing the character on screen. But I have some reservations about that, which we will get into in spoilers, I think.
Yes, I agree. I think he has a great presence. His performance is excellent. I have no issues with any part of the portrayal, but I do have some reservations about its character going forward, which is a very spoilery thing. But hold on just a second. Okay, sorry. But yeah, again, like we've spent a lot of time kind of dunking on this movie and non-spoilers, but we both liked it. It was fun. Our theater was all laughing too. Everybody seemed to be having a good time, and that is a really good indication. It's just the visuals that are really starting to irk me a little bit. And there was discussion on Twitter this week going around about you remember the last scene in Captain America: The First Avenger, where he wakes up in the 1940s hospital bed and he realizes something is up because the game on the radio is a game he's been to. Someone pointed it out that it's so wild that Steve Rogers is in a location interacting with things in the room. That is so rare in Marvel these days, that like a person will pick something up off the table or use a prop, because it's all on the fucking volume or on a green screen, and there are no props, I guess.
Yeah.
And I didn't even think that much about it until someone pointed out, but it's very true, because that's an essential part. Like, we have a friend who works in set design and art direction. It's an important part of movies, and the Marvel movies seem to be neglecting it entirely recently, which is a real shame. So hopefully they, get back to that. But
yeah, that's such a good point, because all this stuff in the quantum realm, just feels unattainable, because it's like, it's all CGI, it's VFX. It's like it's the only things that they could really touch were like the thing that they get for Kang, and we'll talk about the spoilers, but there's only like a few things that they really do interact with. That's a interesting point. I like that.
But even when they're inside, it's like they're inside in empty rooms with no furniture or no items. Like,
yeah, true.
Those interiors, they can just be sets and have things in them that people can use. Like, why? It's, and I don't think this is the first Marvel movie to have this problem. It's just where it got pointed out to me, and I'm noticing it. But overall enjoyed it, but suffers in a lot of regards. But you have a note about Phase 5's introduction here.
I think from the fan response that I've seen online, it feels like fans are kind of getting split into these like two camps. There's either fans who really love this film wholeheartedly and they enjoy a lot of aspects of it. They really like Kang, they really like Ant-Man, all this stuff. And then you got some fans on the other side who just really are starting to hate this movie with a burning passion, or at least that's how it feels, just like people are just being very nitpicky. And I feel like the fan base is like, just that side of the fan base is just turning a little bit toxic in a way.
Yeah. I think some of those people are not fans either. I have seen many people who are like excited that this movie is not doing as well and not getting reviewed as well, because they're like excited for the downfall of this franchise, which I think is a little childish, but whatever. It's Twitter.
Well, yeah. And at the end of the day, we're talking about a superhero film that's like, it's mainly made for kids, I feel like. So
they all are,
yeah.
So, as dark as they sometimes can get, they are first and foremost for kids. but
Yeah.
that
So,
doesn't excuse them when they lapse in quality. But
absolutely. And I mean, you love it or you hate it. At the end of the day, we're talking about a very silly film. So,
it is very
it's like,
silly, and it is
I,
comedic.
yeah, you don't need to have such strong opinions on it. It's like, appreciate it for what it is. And, I'm sure that given, yeah, like we've been saying with the MCU, I feel like the feedback that they've gotten, and especially with this movie, they'll probably make some good adjustments, or hopefully, fingers crossed.
Yeah, and enjoying it for what it is doesn't mean don't criticize it. We have already done that extensively, but there are different forms of criticism, and they are not all created equal, I would say.
Yes, absolutely.
But we are going to transition into spoilerinos about right now. So let's talk about Janet Van Dyne being trapped in the quantum realm. So we knew she was trapped down there for a really long time, but now we get some more information on what was going on in that time. She meets Kang pretty early on in her time there, it seems, and they become friends. They bond a lot, and they're working together to escape until she realizes what he has done in the past. So, what did you think about that little bit of the plot?
I thought it was an interesting, or I guess it was a fine way to introduce the rest of the plot. I mean, I think the big issue that I have with like Janet's character in this movie is that her entire reasoning for not telling anyone about Kang is arbitrary. She doesn't really have a very good reason for it. It's just really she needed to not tell anyone so that way the plot could progress, and then they get sucked into the quantum realm and all this stuff can happen. So I think the some of that stuff in the back of like how Janet and Kang were kind of there together, it's fine and it works for the plot. It's not like I just think that the way that they wrote it into the script and kind of wrote around it, with the last movie, it's kind of weird, I guess, is the best way that word I could put on it. Maybe a little lazy, but I think the rest of the film, as it progresses, I really enjoyed getting to explore some of these aspects of the quantum realm, like meeting these locals, kind of diving into that side of things. And then I think, meeting some of these characters like MODOK, they were fun, and just like the world building I felt was really unique in the story too. But yeah, like as it moves towards the end and they have this big, CGI battle, it's like it can feel a little bit like too much at moments, I feel like.
Okay. I will say with Janet not telling them about Kang, I was totally fine with that before they entered the quantum realm, because I could totally see like this was a part of her life that she wanted to leave behind now that she's escaped. Once they're in the quantum realm and she refuses to talk, that's where it gets a little dicey, because that felt like it was more for us to assist in the build up to his reveal more than it was about why would she not tell Hank and Hope about this? This is essential information for them to know at this point. I didn't have a huge issue with it. It was just a little bit weird. Another weird thing is that pretty much the entire supporting cast from the first two movies, including Michael Pena's Luis, and Scott's ex-wife, and and her new husband are gone in this movie, which even if it was just like one scene or two at the beginning before all the guys get sucked in to the quantum realm, it was weird that they weren't there, but whatever, I guess.
It's fine, I guess, but like I just think that if it's going to be an Ant-Man movie, and in the past two films, it has been established that you have these extra characters that are like friends of our main cast, and they have these kinds of specific tropes and moments along the way in these stories. It's like, why would you not kind of revisit that? Why would you do this whole unique thing now where it's just like Scott Lang doing a monologue voiceover of him just walking down the street and stuff and doing all these things? And I mean, that montage is fine, but like, I think it would have been so much better if we started off the movie with one of those comedic rapid fire recaps from Lewis.
And then
and then he could be like, and then this big Thanos guy came down to Earth and he snapped his fingers, but then Scott went back in the past and he saved the world and he went up Thanos' ass and expanded, like all that kind of stuff, it would have been
Yeah,
fun
at
and
minimum,
comedic.
an opening monologue would have been really funny.
Mm-hmm.
And I was thinking about this because they did the same thing with the Thor movies. Thor's Earth's supporting cast in Thor Ragnarok is not in the movie. You got Natalie Portman, Stellan Skarsgård, Kat Dennings, who are not in Thor Ragnarok, and it works there, but it didn't feel weird in that movie, but it felt weird here for whatever reason.
Yes.
But it's
Well,
not a huge missed opportunity in my mind. It's just a little one, but it's a strange decision, I think.
It is strange, and it just kind of creates a little bit of a tonal gap, I would say, between the two movies. The quirkiness still carries through in a lot of those humor moments and everything, but I think it is just a missed opportunity. Like, I think we disagree here a little bit on like how big of an opportunity they missed. I guess it's not huge, but like, even if you introduce that cast, I think it would have been very interesting to, like, during his recap, it could have been like, okay, what have those guys been up to since the blip? Like, did any of them survive the blip? And if they did, like, what happened? What did they do during the time? Like, maybe because they had that security business, right? Maybe they, during the blip, during those 5 years, there was no competition, so then they just became big successes,
That would be funny.
And then now they have like a security company that's
like a massive security firm,
across the US, and maybe they have like a contract with like the US Defense Department, and then that can okay, then let's bring them into other movies down the line because they have this defense contract now or something like that.
Don't make them work for the Defense Department, Niles.
But they're
we want to like them.
Yeah, fuck the government.
The American government, but yeah.
Yes.
So, but what was I gonna say? I forgot. But yeah, no, you're right. That would have been really funny. But I do understand they have a new set of characters they wanted to focus on. They really wanted to dive into the quantum realm. I get that. And I think they want to spend those few minutes before we dive into the quantum realm establishing the new status quo for the relationship between Scott and Cassie, who is now a older teenager or young adult. I'm not really sure how old she's supposed to be here, but I think she's like 17 or 18, it seemed like. But yeah, it's a weird missed opportunity, but it didn't break the movie for me. It's just one of those things like, that was odd. Another odd thing is Bill Murray is in this movie for one scene. I do have a upsetting theory as to why. There were misconduct allegations against Bill Murray by actress Gina Davis that came out in October of last year, around when the trailer for this movie came out. So my theory is that they removed Bill Murray scenes that did not have to be there for the plot. Which I don't want to comment too much on that whole saga with Bill Murray because I do not know the information offhand, and I don't know if that's why, but that makes the most sense as to why, like, a character that appeared in the trailer and seems pretty important to the backstory of this movie is in one scene.
Yeah, that's probably the I think you're onto something there, Dylan. Because like, he's in there for one scene and then he's out, and then they never really talk about him again. And it's like, okay. Well,
he does like get eaten, maybe, kind of, but I don't know.
I think it's implied. Yeah,
it was weird. But one thing I really did like, and I wish we got more of, was the world building of the quantum realm. I think it's a really fun setting and has tons of different elements that were set up within here. We have the freedom fighters. Why do I keep doing that? Freedom fighters. They have a whole little faction that's rebelling against Kang's empire. They have buildings that are alive and sentient, which is a fun little element that I would like to see more of in the future. We have that nomad group that they get the flying stingray from, and Kang's empire, of course. I feel like we could have spent a lot more time world building here. I feel like they wanted their own Arrakis in the quantum realm from Dune, and they did not get it because they didn't spend the requisite time to establish all of that. And I feel like since the plot is extremely straightforward, they could have spent a little bit more time developing these different factions and the nature of the world and stuff like that. Weekly Planet podcast also mentioned that It feels like the quantum realm has a roof over it, which I agree, and I also don't like that. But other than that, I really like the setting and I want more.
Kind of like saying it's contained, like a little, like it didn't stretch its legs
Yeah.
enough.
Yeah, well, no, it's like literally like it looked like it had a roof instead of a sky.
Oh,
Yeah.
gotcha.
And
Yeah.
it made the realm feel more contained than it needed to, if that makes sense. I know they are
Yes.
trapped down there, but they could have their own like stellar ecosystem up there as well, or something like that.
Oh
But
yeah.
overall, I'm very positive on the quantum realm. What did you think about it a little bit?
Yeah, I like it. I like the setting a lot. And yeah, I do agree. Like when we were watching it, I kind of got Dune vibes from parts of it, kind of Star Wars vibes with some of the
Mm-hmm.
or like the character or the creature designs and stuff. Is like that looks like it was just pulled right out of Star Wars or something like
Yeah.
that. But yeah, I think all the creatures were probably one of the more interesting parts to me. The creature designs and the aesthetics, like the
Yeah.
buildings that you said were just alive, the living homes, the I don't even
Well,
know what the species type thing was called, but the light beacon guy with the light on his head
oh
that just
yeah,
kind of
he was
shot the beam.
interesting. And
He was an
the little
interesting,
goo guy who was
yeah,
obsessed with
yeah,
holes.
the glooby guy who like you drank him and then you learned the language, like you were able to like communicate with other people. It's like
Mm-hmm.
that's a neat concept and I like that, and that's a good way to kind of explain how all the communication works. But
Mm-hmm.
like, all those kinds of characters were cool, and even like the humanoid characters were neat as
Yeah.
well. I just think they were just kind of superficially touched on. It was just like, here's a brief overview of everything that exists down here, all these
Mm-hmm.
cool creatures and stuff. But like, we didn't really have enough time to get to know any of these characters or really start to care about them. Like, you
No.
know, there's a moment in the film where that light beacon head guy, I don't even remember his name, or if even if he had a name, but basically Kang just fucking kills him,
Yeah.
in what looks like in an excruciating way.
Mm-hmm.
And like, it's kind of like, at least the moment, it feels like, oh, this is kind of more of a serious moment, and only the other characters in the movie reacting to his death, it's kind of like they're the only ones who care.
Yeah.
I liked his character design, but like it would have been more emotionally impactful if we had taken a little bit of time to
Mm-hmm.
explore these resistance fighters and those factions, like you were just saying, just to actually give them a little bit more depth.
Yeah, because it's not a very long movie, and I think maybe another 10 minutes building out the world in various ways would have helped a lot with
Mm-hmm.
that. Building out the world, building out these side characters, because none of them, aside from our core few, have a lot going on, which is okay in a lot of senses, but you want us to care about them when they die. You got to cook them up a little bit more than that. And
Exactly.
but that being said, it is a very potentially rich new setting that they can do a lot of stuff with going forward. They just have to,
Mm-hmm.
they just have to, like the Guardians of the Galaxy films and the Thor films. Their settings, I think, are mostly pretty well defined and they feel like real places. So they could do that with this too. And I'm excited to see more of it. But speaking of the quantum realm, let's talk about its emperor a little bit. Kang the Conqueror, played by Jonathan
Yes.
Majors.
Yes. I think, yeah, he is the part of the movie that I was looking forward to the most.
Mm-hmm.
Because I really liked his portrayal in Loki as He Who Remains.
Yes.
He was also very powerful in that performance. He's very expressive with his like facial reactions, and just like you can tell just like how he's using his face, you can tell exactly what he's thinking, kind
Mm-hmm.
of like his thought process, and he's very expressive in that way. So I think he's just like such a phenomenal actor here. Um, but I think, well, I'm satisfied in a lot of respects with the character in this movie, and it's serving as an introduction for him into the larger MCU. I just feel like it kind of fell short a little bit
Mm-hmm.
on doing the character justice and really establishing him as a threat. And I'll elaborate on that a little bit more, because I know that this isn't his official introduction, but um, if we're going to be if we're going to have Kang as the main antagonist in some of these
Mm-hmm.
future films and these future projects, like the Kang Dynasty, which is going to be one of those big Avengers movies.
Yeah, that's the
Like
next Avengers movie. So.
yeah, so it's like if they're building him up to be this big threat, and this is his second introduction into the MCU, then I think that we really need to this movie really should have established him as a bigger threat and something a little bit more ominous and something to be feared. And I have two comparisons that I'll draw here with some previous villains. So first is kind of apples to apples for Thanos. So, you know, if he's going to be kind of the next Thanos character, if we look back at like his introduction in Infinity War, and again, completely different movies, to be fair, and they have long-term plans with Kang, with his variants and everything. So we got plenty of there's plenty of baseline to go with him. But you know, within the first 10 minutes of Infinity War, Thanos kills half of like the Asgardian population. He kills Heimdall. He kills Loki. He clobbers the Hulk, and he leaves Thor for dead after blowing up their ship. That's within the first 10 minutes. That is a fucking threat. You know, it's like, okay, yes, this establishes him very well as a force to be reckoned with. In Quantumania, Kang just basically kills extras.
Right. That's definitely true. But I think the problem comes in that Infinity War was not our introduction to Thanos. Remember, we've been building up to him from the post credits of Avengers 1, and then he shows up, I think he's in Guardians of the Galaxy a little bit, and he shows up at Avengers 2. There's a post credits scene. But what the build up to Thanos did that the build up to Kang is not doing is Thanos was established as a dangerous threat, but was very far removed from our heroes, so they didn't fight him. Kang has now been introduced 2 separate times and been killed 2 separate times, if this version is killed. And I have a couple issues with the way he's being handled. One is that his introduction here is structurally incredibly similar, almost to the point of being the same as it is in Loki. There's a lot of mystery building up to him about who's this big figure who's in charge. We hear that he's very threatening, and then we meet him, and then a character kills him. And I understand they probably did that so that people who didn't watch Loki can be up to speed. But I would say commit to one of the two of these things. Either introduce him in Loki and say you need to watch Loki, or introduce him in this and he's not part of Loki. I like, because if you're watching both, we got the same beat twice, and it's kind of annoying, I think. But my other main issue is it's more of a worry, I think. Where did I put this? It's that he has now been beaten. 2 versions of him have been beaten by a singular character. And I understand that they are introducing an army of Kangs, right? But like you said, he doesn't feel like as enough of a threat to warrant like all of our heroes fighting against him. I feel like there are a couple who could handle him on their own at this point, and that worries me for the next Avengers movie.
Me too, a little bit.
Yeah, and I do think it's interesting that it's not one big bad guy, Thanos, and an army. It's an army of the big bad guy this time around, and the challenge of fighting him is going to be different. But in terms of building stakes and tension, killing the new main villain off twice in his first 2 appearances is questionable, I guess.
It's an odd choice. Yeah, it is very strange. And I mean, you know, they do some through exposition, you know, they do communicate him as a threat, where it's like, oh, he destroyed timelines off screen, you know, and he, like, when he's being introduced to Ant-Man, this movie, so he's like, are you the one with the hammer? Did I kill you already? Like, he's asking these questions, and it's like, okay, that is good exposition there. But yeah, it still doesn't, I don't think, fully communicate like how fearful we should be of him, or like, yeah, if 2 of our, you know, mainstay Avengers folks can just like, and even not even full Avengers, you know, it's Loki. By the way, go watch our Loki episode, but it's Loki, and then there's, you know, Ant-Man dispatching of these guys, and they're not even like the big heroes of like, the decade, you know. So yeah, it is kind of odd. And I think
one more similarity that I forgot to mention.
Yeah, go for it.
In Loki, He Who Remains warns Sylvie and Loki, like, I might be bad, but I'm holding off something worse. And then they kill him in the multiverse fractures, right? So all the different Kangs are coming out. This guy is basically saying the same thing, that he is bad,
Yes.
but he's and like they're supposed why are they why do these two have the same fucking motivation in a sense? I don't like that. Like make this Kang the Conqueror one of the ones, or the main one, that He Who Remains was worried about. That would be better, I think.
Yeah.
Like,
or
because
even
because now it feels like a repeat of the same beat instead of a build after the previous introduction, you know?
Yeah, or it even could have been like, what if we had even gotten like a scene where it was the He Who Remains banishing Kang to the quantum realm? Like, what if he was the one who sent him there, and then all the other stuff happens? But I don't know, all wishful thinking. And I had another comparison that might have been a little bit more fair,
Okay.
From Phase 4 than Thanos, because Thanos is the whole entire different movie, and Infinity War was his film. That was his
right,
like character development film. I'm going to compare it to Wanda from Doctor Strange 2, because and I like that movie, but I think the reason why I'm drawing this comparison is because Wanda in Doctor Strange 2 properly establishes stakes around her character.
Yes.
And they do this because they go to a different universe, and she's just on like a kill streak. She just kills the Illuminati, just like bing, bang, boom, kills the smartest man in the universe, all these like stupid other like heroes and stuff. And even though that action of her killing all those people, it has no consequence in the film, it still establishes her as a very viable threat. So it's like, if you're introducing the idea of multiverses and different timelines and everything like that, it's like, I feel like maybe they could have used that angle to maybe give Kang some, more threatening,
like
or
show him killing a set of Avengers or something.
Yes. Something even as simple as that.
One thing that I just thought of, a way that, and I'm going to talk more about the ending later and Scott specifically, but a way that you could have had Kang remain threatening, as threatening as he needs to be, and have Scott and them win in this movie is, and I know there's a heist sort of in the movie, but they cripple, instead of doing what they did and just fight him, they cripple him by stealing something essential from him. That like, which I guess is kind of what they do, but like make it so they don't have to beat him physically. They just have to outwit him and outrun him. That would be a nice way to thread the needle there, so that we don't lose it. And it makes him scarier. It would make him scarier because they aren't able to defeat him. But more on that later. You have a note about their final fight, though, here.
Yes. And maybe this is an unpopular opinion, but, this is the third Ant-Man movie. He's been in, I guess, with the Avengers and Civil War and everything, like 6 movies at this point. Like a lot of movies. And I feel like that's usually kind of like, I feel like most characters in these movies, like Captain America and Tony Stark, 5, maybe 6 movies where they're kind of a main character is probably about their limit. And I feel like that's kind of a good thing to kind of strive for. But even then, this is his third solo film with the Wasp. And I feel like this could have been a very appropriate time to have the Ant-Man character, Scott Lang, killed off. They do have this climactic moment like between Ant-Man and Kang. This is final scene where they're just beating the shit out of each other. And I mean, from the trailer and everything, it definitely made it seem like Ant-Man was going to die. So that's where this like thought is coming from too. But I feel like that scene, his family had already escaped and everything. I think it would have been appropriate in that moment for Kang to kill Ant-Man, like beat him to death. Maybe not beat him to death, maybe something like not as brutal for the kids and everything. But,
well, I mean, he does choke out Loki. Thanos does.
That's
and that's
true, yeah.
For the kids.
That is pretty brutal.
But I have a less gruesome alternative that I'll talk about later when we talk about the ending. But I agree, the trailer really made it seem like the crux of the movie was going to be Scott makes a deal with Kang to get the time he lost with Cassie back, and then at the end of the movie, he would have to sacrifice himself to defeat Kang, losing all of the time he would have had with her.
Yes.
That is what the trailer, that's not what the movie is. the trailer makes it seem like it is. That would have been a good movie, I think. But
Yes.
I also like a lot of what they did, but it's like a lot of those lines that we think are directed at Scott are directed at Janet in the movie itself, which we don't have her next, but I let's just jump to Janet.
Yeah, let's talk about Janet.
Because she, I think, is the second main character of this movie more so than anybody else. I think
more so than the Wasp and Ant-Man, or
well,
definitely more than the Wasp.
Well, you have to remember too, Janet Van Dyne was the original Wasp, so the title is still accurate. It's just not the Wasp we were thinking of.
Good catch.
Yeah, but Hope is a fucking non-entity in this movie, but Janet, I think, gets a lot to do, and I wish we'd gotten some flashbacks to her days as a rebel against Kang. We skip over all of that for some reason. That would have been a great little bit, and maybe we could see why she was so cagey to talk about it with her family if we did that.
Yeah, that would have been great. Like even if we got those flashbacks, you could have even like sown some narrative seeds in there where maybe it's not one of those freedom fighters that we see later in the film and they work with, but maybe it's like a parent of one of those, like, freedom fighters, or like, the
or Bill Murray.
Ants. Yeah, Bill Murray. Like, yeah, that's probably what happened. Like, Bill Murray was in one of those scenes.
You're probably right.
We got to cut this now. But I mean, you could even cut out Bill Murray from one of those scenes and still have had like a decent freedom fighter.
They digitally remove people all the time in these movies. They could do it.
If you could do that, you could do it then. But yeah, I mean, Janet, we talked about her motivation earlier, and yeah, I think she is. I would agree with your assessment there, Dylan, that she is, like, after Ant-Man, definitely our second protagonist of this film. And
Cassie's up there too, but I think Janet has the most character. I mean, she's the one with the connection to the villain, and the movie, it seems to be playing a lot with her feelings about her past actions. Michelle Pfeiffer, by the way, really shines here. I think she gives a really excellent performance, and I'm glad she's getting more to do this time around, because she's not in the second one a whole lot, so she didn't get to do much. There was a deleted flashback scene from Ant-Man 2 of Hank and Janet on a mission, though. A flashback sequence with them de-aged, and it leaked online, and I watched it, and it's great, but not this movie, so it doesn't matter.
Well, yeah, it's like if her, like, inability, or just like she doesn't want to talk about why, or about her time in like the quantum realm, it's like, I feel like we do need some glimpses into that. We can't just be, it's like showing and not telling. Like, please show us something, please, like anything at all. Like we got some stuff about like her and Kang and their introduction and their kind of like bond as they were kind of just solo.
Good sequence, I think.
Yeah, I thought that was a pretty good sequence as well. But like, couldn't we have seen, like, it doesn't have to be at the start of the film, but even like later on in the film, we get some stuff about her work with the freedom fighters against Kang. Maybe there could even been like parallel fight scenes where like Kang's destroying their village a second time after destroying it 20 years ago in the quantum realm and all this stuff. Like, that could have been a very neat thing, but whatever.
Or you do it like, how the Marvel Studios logo comes up every movie. Maybe before we get that, we have a cold open Lord of the Rings style, Star Wars style battle sequence with her fighting against some like army. We don't see they want to save Kang for later, so we don't see him, but we see the army she's fighting against.
Yes,
that would have been fun. It would have, been a cool hook, but I think she was really good in this. She got a lot of stuff to do. Michelle Pfeiffer crushed it, and
I would agree.
We also had Hank Pym just kind of hanging out this time around. Michael Douglas is either having a lot of fun or is entirely checked out. I don't know, but I thought he was pretty funny.
He's just there. He's there to like deliver his 10 lines and then walk away with his check at the end of the day. Just be like, yep, easy money.
Yeah, I don't know if he gives a shit anymore or not, but I enjoyed the performance for whatever he was doing. I also, it's literally nothing, and it's not meant to be taken seriously, but if it weren't for socialism, they would have lost.
Thank God for socialist ants.
Yes. Yeah, I know the Disney Corporation is not advocating for left-wing politics, but I thought that was funny.
Yeah, they just like to pepper it in to be like, yeah, we're woke-ish.
Yeah, they didn't say socialism was bad, which is progress
Yes,
for mainstream movies, but
that's true.
yeah.
Yeah, and I mean Hank, he did fine. Yeah, Michael Douglas I think he was either looking stunned or just like, you know,
He was always checking his little
there.
earpiece because
Yeah.
they did the bare minimum to make the ants not Deus Ex Machina.
Yeah, right.
I loved the little bit at the beginning where he buys the smaller pizza and uses the Pym particles to make it bigger. That was funny.
Yes.
It was
Yes.
that was a great little thing that I feel like you would see in a comic book issue, like different ways this character would, save some money in his regular
Yeah.
life by using his powers.
Well, I always
But
love that stuff when they throw that into the script of just like using the shrinking or the enlarging stuff.
Mhm.
Like when they were picking up Cassie from jail, like she had the
Oh yeah, she had a little
tiny
cop
shrink
car.
down cop car. I was like, that's excellent. That's a good joke.
And that is a good joke because the cop is like yelling at her. It's like, I know you took it. I know it was you. And of course you assume it's, something reasonable, but no, she stole his cop car and shrunk it. Like that is a good joke. The jokes in this movie are good. There are lots of criticisms you can make of it, but I honestly think the humor works.
Me too. Yes.
And I think don't want to talk about him yet, but I think it's fucking ridiculous that people are like taking screenshots of MODOK and criticizing him for looking stupid. It's like, my guy, it's MODOK. He's supposed to look stupid. He looks fucking ridiculous.
It's an absurd supervillain. How do you translate that to the screen and not make it look buffoonish?
Yeah, and there were people who were like, I'm so mad that he doesn't have hair. Like, why? Why is that what's making you mad? They decided to combine him with Darren Cross from the first movie to tie it back to the first movie a little bit, which I think was a good decision. But let's talk about Scott, our main character, for a little bit. Consistently fun performance from Paul Rudd. He's good in all of these movies. And, he's just great. He's charming. He's fun. I like Scott again.
Yeah. I don't got many bad things to say about him because I think he's comedic. I like that the relationship between him and his daughter is like always such a constant through line throughout all these movies. It's like you get his motivation. It's family. It's always family. It's always his daughter. So I appreciate that it's so consistent through these films. And I think the chemistry between him and his daughter Cassie was good overall. It was great. Like they had some good father-daughter moments of action and dialogue, like when they were both large and then they got really small, she was just like, I'm so tired. Like citrus, it's the citrus thing. Like I thought that was good. It's like, yep, she's Scott's daughter. That's they had a good chemistry there, I think.
Yes, I will say, just harkening back to the visuals, that scene where they're both big is one of the clearest examples of the visuals not doing their job properly, because the backgrounds behind them are so featureless for the most part that they don't look like they're really big. They just look like they're normal. Because a lot of people were saying, like, why would you put Scott in this foreign environment where his powers have no like impact on the environment? It's like, they do. They all still get a little tiny and big and change sizes to do things, but in shots like that, it doesn't have the proper impact because we don't have a set piece or like equipment or whatever that they're standing by that contrasts against their huge size. But I like their chemistry too.
Yeah.
Some people have said they didn't have chemistry, but I disagree. I liked it. I also thought it was an interesting character trait that Scott, at the beginning of the movie at least, is pretty content to just not save the world as much anymore. Like he's kind of resting on his laurels from saving everything that one time, and he wrote a book. And I think, more power to him. That's a totally fair thing to say. He's like, I reassembled the Avengers and time traveled and saved half of all life in the universe. I can just relax. I like that Cassie, though, is kind of, she's getting arrested and stuff, but getting arrested for doing like good activism and like actually giving a shit, which is how Scott originally got arrested too. I think he was like stealing money from a corrupt corporation or something like that. or leaking documents. I forget
Something like
exactly what
that.
his
Yeah, I
crime was.
can't entirely remember.
But she's kind of picking up the torch from him in more ways than one, it feels like, which I thought was good. But I like Scott. Again, I always like Scott. I like Paul Rudd. It's hard not to, right?
Yeah, it's difficult to find someone to say, oh no, Ant-Man as a character sucks. It's like, no, it's especially when you got Paul Rudd in there, it's like, yeah, he's charismatic, he's charming, he's funny. It's like, what more could you really want from them? And yeah, Cassie's good character overall. Yeah, like I appreciate that, for lack of a better term, like I feel like Disney is a little bit, embracing wokeism in a good way.
Good. It's always in a good way, I think.
Yes, it is, I think. But like people would just like, associate that term with just like anything broad that's just like all social justice warrior stuff. And it's like
people say something's woke if it has a black person in it. Like it's just it's just reactionaries whining from their from their cribs that they don't fit in anymore because they're adults, but they behave like babies.
Yeah. No, yeah, it's such a weird term to use, but yeah, I think for this context, what I mean is just, Disney understands that it is an important value to be, a social justice warrior, to be really focused on the issues and thinking about these things, and actually like, rather than just saying something, doing something about it. And I think not saying that Disney's doing that at all.
They're not
talking about the character.
I think what they're really doing is they're recognizing that is the marketable position to have now, because people who actually give a shit have moved in that direction and are more progressive and doing things like that. And Disney has recognized that is where the majority of their target audience is on the political spectrum now. Like whenever the conservatives complain about something going woke, it's like, it's gone woke because most people went woke. You are the outlier. You're the weird one. And also your outrage is part of Disney's marketing. Like you're helping them, you idiot.
Yeah.
It's like it's like remember the Gillette and Nike ads and stuff like that the conservatives lost their fucking minds about.
Yes.
Yeah, it was like, hey, you dipshits, you conservative dipshits, you getting mad and posting online every day about goddamn Gillette is the ad.
That's the point.
You are free marketing. And then when like the M&Ms this
spokesperson change.
Yeah, well, because so Tucker Carlson got very upset that the M&M, the female M&M they changed her shoes or shape or something, and thus she was no longer fuckable enough in his mind. So he spent multiple hours of primetime TV complaining about this, and so I guess his audience was maybe going to boycott M&Ms or something. But here's the reality of that situation: M&M puts different shoes on a cartoon character. Conservatives spend hours and hours and hours and hours talking about goddamn M&Ms, and then they're like, I'm going to boycott M&Ms, or I'm going to throw out all of my M&M products. But then you're in the grocery store checkout line and you see that bag of M&Ms there, and you're going to buy the M&Ms because you know what? M&Ms are fucking delicious. And at the end of the day, you still want the M&Ms. So boom, you've been played, assholes. But
you thought you got them, but you got.
Yeah, it's so funny. Like all you have to do to trick a conservative is like say a basic fact and they lose their fucking minds. But
yes, and we're speaking very broadly here too. So
yeah,
yes,
I'm online too much. I see the worst of them. But yeah, I liked her. I feel like she is being positioned to be the ant person going forward, because I do think Scott is not an original team member of the Avengers, but he is like the second wave. I think eventually they will be phasing him out. And I think especially as they seem to be gearing up for Young Avengers with Kate Bishop and America Chavez from Doctor Strange and a couple other characters, like it makes sense that they're doing that, right?
Yeah. It makes sense. Yeah, I thought she was good, and I mean, she'd certainly had more agency in the film than Hope Van Dyne.
Yes, absolutely.
And yeah, she was just kind of there as like a reactionary face and just as a supporting character. She didn't. I feel like without any familial relation, she didn't really have like much connection with everything that was going on.
She felt like she was there because she had to be there because she was in the first two.
Yeah, they're like, we gotta put her in there, and yeah, she didn't really have much to do. But God, I just can't get over that wig.
It's
like,
pretty bad. It's not
so
good.
bad. I don't know why or how they approved that. Because that's like, you look, I like looked at a picture from like the last movie and I was like, yeah, her hair looks fine. Like her hair looks good. And then this one, I'm like, why? Well, why did they do that to her?
I don't know. Sometimes bad wigs rear their ugly heads, but
Yeah,
it is odd. She very much takes a backseat to her mother in this movie. This is more about Janet than it is her. And I kind of think Janet is just a more interesting character at this point. She's got a lot more going on. She's been through more stuff. Maybe I need to rewatch the first movie, but I don't really give that much of a shit about Hope as a character, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, I'm kind of in a similar boat.
Yeah, but MODOK, the goofiest thing in the movie. MODOK, who was a big head with tiny little legs and a tiny little butt that they're apparently censoring in some markets.
Really?
Yeah, they're blurring out the ass.
No fucking way. Oh my God.
Yeah, who knows? But I thought he was very funny. And
yes.
Yeah, I liked his little redemption. I liked the scene where Cassie tells him it's never too late to stop being a dick. That's another scene that's getting dunked on online for some reason, but in the context of the movie and that character, it totally works.
Yeah, like I get it that like in the moment, if someone just told me don't be a dick, I don't think that I would change my entire way of life and go kamikaze on someone. But context matters, and I think the context absolutely matters here. So like if you take that same kind of scene out of context and you're like, yeah, if that happened to me, I wouldn't react that way and all that. So I can, yeah, it's weird, but he's such a fucking silly character to begin with. He's a floating body with these dangling limbs, and his face is like to ridiculous proportions. Like, like how are you going to make this look good in live action? You can't. You can't. Like,
no. I think they did. I think they accomplished exactly what they wanted to. They wanted Corey Stoll's face to be big, and they did it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's such a weird character design, and yeah, like I knew it was going to be stupid, but like the fact that they work it into the narrative as a joke, great job. Like Scott is joking about it, like just like,
and
wait,
Hank
Darren?
is like, Darren?
Yeah.
Everybody has the same reaction. They're like, wait, what?
Darren? What the hell happened to you? Like,
yeah.
Yeah,
but
he's so silly, but it is a good way to like, work in a comic character in a more believable way, like,
or in an organic way for this.
Yes, in
series.
an organic way. Thank you. Yeah, that's a much better way of putting it. Because yeah, if this was just like a random mobilized organic killing machine thing, like it kind of doesn't have as much of a good impact, and I feel like it would kind of feel like a disservice to a lot of fans too. Like if they saw that, they're like, and it's a side character in this movie, they're gonna be like, well, I wanted a whole movie for MODOK,
Yeah, MODOK fans might be pissed. I think MODOK fans are pissed at the way they handled him here, but I don't really care. If I'm sorry, I don't. But I think it was a good way to tie him, give him like a little redemptive arc with Cassie, because the first movie ends with him like grabbing her in her bedroom as like, don't attack me, Scott, I'm gonna kill your kid. So it was a good way to tie up that little thread. And then where he's like dying and he's like, at least I got to be an Avenger, and everybody's like, sure you did, pal, you did it. This is one of those moments where I said earlier it had its earnest moments and its jokes. This is the one area where they kind of blend together, which might contradict my statement, but I don't think we were meant to take MODOK seriously or really like him here. So I think it works in that context,
I agree. Yeah, it does kind of get a little muddled in that part of the film. And I had a brief idea. This was just an idea that I was kind of throwing back and forth in my head. Like if there was a different way to kind of like rewrite this film, because I feel like, at the end of the day, this film was really to introduce Kang to a larger audience and kind of set up some subsequent films for him and all that stuff. But, of course, Ant-Man was the protagonist, and we got some good character development there. But like another way that they maybe could have taken this film was make MODOK the main villain,
That's true.
and maybe he's seeking revenge on Scott, because you already have that motivation there with Darren and how he was kind of like, condemned to the quantum realm by Scott in the first film. And so, you got that character motivation there from the Yellow Jacket. And then that would kind of eliminate the need for Janet to also lie about her time in the quantum realm. Like she even need to lie about it, just an idea. And then you could have even, if you wanted to introduce Kang, then it could have been a whole third act thing where he comes in for a Thanos style introduction and fucking like, maybe he just like wipes the floor with MODOK, like, completely destroys him in front of them. And it's like, okay, shit, that sets some stakes here. But, all hypothetical now, of course.
Right. And I will reiterate, both of us are aware that MODOK looks stupid. We're just also aware that that is the point. So it's not worth like film Twitter has a thing they love to do where they take scenes, like usually leaked footage, and they start circulating like a scene out of context and criticizing it or making fun of it. And it's like, you guys should know better. That's not how to critique a movie. You're removing something from the context of the thing it's in. And they it's bad criticism. Twitter is not a place for good criticism. There are very thoughtful and insightful people on film Twitter, but a lot of them are just in it for an easy dunk, which is a shame. But that's Twitter as a whole,
Yeah.
But I will say, one, aside from the like visual blandness, the biggest negative for me is the editing of the action scenes. Fucking awful for the most part. So many quick cuts. And the problem with the editing here is exacerbated because our characters are going from like normal size to small to big. And when you're cutting as quickly as you are, like we've talked about like geography of action scenes before, right? A good action scene, you have to be able to know where every character is in relation to everyone else. And the editing of these scenes makes that impossible to do.
Yes.
So
it is a lot going on, and they go from large to small really quick. And when you're already in such a microverse, it gets, even I just feel like as a compounding effect too on the viewer. But
but speaking of getting bigger and smaller, leading up to the movie, we talked about this, but a lot of people were like, why are you taking him out of the regular universe and putting him into a tiny universe where his powers will have no impact on the surrounding? It's like, bad criticism. One, because you haven't seen the movie, obviously. And two, they do that. They get smaller and they get bigger. They do that all the time. It's like
it's fine. Like, like don't think about it too hard.
or just like I am always consistently baffled by critiques like this. It's like, wait, are you telling me that you don't think he's going to shrink or get bigger in this movie just because he went into the like tiny little quantum realm? Is that really what you're saying to me? Because that is uncreative as fuck. It means you have no imagination, and if that's something you actually believe. But the scale problem does exist because of what we've talked about. The characters are usually like in the frame by themselves, or with like a out of focus background with no real detail, and that is where the scale comes into play. But there is the scene where Cassie is breaking out the rebel people, and she's like a little tiny and running around. And I love Scott teaching her how to like punch as she's getting bigger, and she learns and gets better at it. That was good stuff. She's not an expert at being an ant person yet, so she's learning. To do.
It's neat. I like that scene too. Of like, it kind of like, it felt like a callback to the original Ant-Man movies, where it's like him kind of like shrinking down and doing these stealth kind of heisty things, like sneaking onto the Avengers compound or something, like way back in the day. And now it's.
And remember in the first one when he's like really small and he's learning how to be small and he's running through the ant colony underground, and then he like sneezes or something and gets big and comes out of the ground. That was all fun. I will say one other thing I didn't put in notes, but I'm sick of the nanotech suits for every character, and the dissolvable helmets and stuff like that. The nanotech suit was like one of Iron Man's worst costumes in his entire run, I thought. Not because of the nanotech, but just the design. But like Thor has a dissolvable helmet, Jane Foster had a dissolvable helmet.
Yep.
Everyone in this movie has one. And it used to just be he had like a little buckle that popped up, and they can have regular helmets.
Yeah, it's like not everything needs to be nanotech, and I think there's a note in there about the VFX too. Like when you have the nanotech helmets that are constantly coming on and off, then it's like you're having to animate that the whole time. And like we saw with like Thor 4, where you saw like on Natalie Portman's face on Jane Foster, like you could obviously tell it's a CGI helmet, and it's just like it doesn't look as well as it could have if it was a real helmet that she could just like put on as a prop or something,
Yeah. And I understand the impulse to like, because what if you want your actors to be able to emote and they want to take the helmet off and then they have to put the helmet somewhere. But okay, fine. Just let them do that. Or in Ant-Man's case, in the first couple movies, or at least the first one, they had a little tiny thing where the tiny suit stayed. Then they just kept it in their pockets. Just to bring that back. That was fun.
Yeah, like why not have that all the time? Like it's kind of weird.
But we talked about scale enough. I would say the standout best sequence of the movie for me in terms of action, at least, was the probability storm, where Scott dives into the thing and he starts multiplying based on all different probabilities or possibilities. It was fun and a little bit freaky, and I loved the visuals actually work here. This is one of the few sequences where the visuals are just good, and I love that he uses that very ant-esque tactic to get to his goal. Like they're all stacking on top of each other like some species of ants can do. And he grabs it and he gets it. It was great. It was a lot of fun.
I agree. I think that's one of my favorite sequences in the film as well. It's very visually appealing, and the VFX does work there. It's a little bit of a contrast to the third act, where it's just kind of a big army of ants. It's a big army of like freedom fighters versus a big army of Kang's followers, and it's just kind of a little bit of a clusterfuck. There's a lot going on, and then I think in this whole sequence where there's kind of this big assault on Kang's fortress, it kind of does break down a little bit thematically and become a little bit of a mess, because like what we were saying earlier, it kind of shifts from like somber moment to a chaotic action, somber moment to chaotic action, and kind of alternates back and forth. And so I think it's kind of like one of those moments in the film where it just needs to like step back and say, okay, give yourself some time to breathe. You can slow down. Not everything needs to be fast.
Right.
Really breathe a little bit.
Well, it's a pacing problem, because what ends up happening is Scott gets really big. He becomes Giant Man, and he's going in like having a lot of fun, clocking people, like wrecking shop. And then he's overwhelmed by all the flying ships. And then the socialist ants show up to save the day. And this all happens in like 90 seconds, I think. And it happens so quickly, we don't have a chance to emotionally feel any of these beats because they move on so quickly. Like, compare it to the Battle of Pelennor Fields in Return of the King, right? The battle starts as the Rohirrim ride over the hill, right? And Theoden has this big speech. They charge. It's super triumphant. They start destroying the orcs. We get to feel that because, like, oh, Minas Tirith is being saved. Let's go. And then the Haradrim and the Oliphants show up, and it's like, oh no, now the Rohirrim are getting overwhelmed, and we really get to feel that. We see Theoden get taken out in this time too, and then we get the beat of Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli arriving with the Ghost Army. And like, in terms of battle flow, those are the same beats as we get with Scott in this movie, but those happen over like half an hour. So we really get to sink into each of them. And that was my biggest problem with this element of the ending, was just, it's so quick.
I agree. Yeah, it's very quick. And I mean, like some of the stuff works, like with the like Modok's death scene, like that's a good comedic moment right in the middle of all this chaos. Like that works fine. But some of those other moments, like the being overwhelmed by Kang and everything, and like all these battles, they're happening really quick. And then I feel like at some points too, like the character positioning on screen, I remember like it's like the three ant people versus Kang, like they're standing across the way from him, and then they have like a little tuffle that lasts maybe like 2 minutes or something like that, and then they're right kind of back exactly where they started, like all 4 of our characters, like they're
Oh,
standing in
okay.
like basically the same spot. And it's like, you could have just cut out that 2-minute fight scene and nothing would have changed right now, like just the visually here. So I think, yeah, there could have been some moments where they lengthen it out, give it some time to breathe, and yeah, like you were saying, pacing.
Yeah, and like you alluded to at the earlier in the episode, you think Kang should have killed Scott or beaten him to death, and we talked about how it would have been a really interesting thematic premise if Scott cut a deal to get more time with Cassie and ends up having to sacrifice himself to defeat Kang, losing all of the time he had left with her. But failing that, and apparently this was the original idea for the ending of the movie, and they changed it. Scott and Hope, I guess, should have stayed trapped in the quantum realm at the end. And this would have added an actual level of sacrifice, and it would have added weight to Scott's line of saying, I don't need to win, I just need you to lose, I think is what he says, or something like that. And one, it leaves the surface level story, like surface of Earth level, for Cassie to take up the mantle and be the new Avenger ant person. And also you have Scott and Hope down in the quantum realm, and they could be doing things like, let's say Kang isn't fully defeated at the end of the movie, but he is trapped. Now you could have Scott and Hope part of this resistance movement down there, like Janet was before, and they can be stuck down there until Kang Dynasty, and that could have been a great return for their characters. Or maybe when we see them again, one of them has died, or one of them's like lost a limb or something, or that like time has passed differently for them and they're older or something fun like that. But and it felt like the movie was doing that, because I guess it was. And then right after that, they get to go back up. It was very odd, I think.
Yeah, I think I would have liked that ending a lot more, actually, even more so than the ending that I put forward either earlier, Kang just killing Scott, because yeah, if they're just trapped down there in the quantum realm, there is so much opportunity for unique storytelling down there. And just even like, you know, if Kang didn't die, then yeah, you have this whole conflict with Kang. Like, do you keep fighting the Empire? How do you fight it? And all this stuff. So yeah, it's a bit of a disappointment that they changed that.
Yeah, and I do like elements of the ending we got, like when Scott's walking down the street and it's a callback to the beginning with the opening monologue, and he's like, wait, he did say there was something worse. And he starts having he starts mentally going down this dark path. It's like, oh no, oh God, what did we do? That's funny. That's a good bit. But I think the ending we just talked about would have been more effective from a character point of view than him just getting out again.
I agree.
So I don't know why I'm guessing they want Scott to do something in Kang Dynasty, and they wanted him out of the quantum realm for that to happen. That's my guess.
Well, I guess we will see, because yeah, we got 2 end of credit scenes here on this movie. One was a setup for the next season of Loki, and the other one just seemed like a setup for the Kang Dynasty.
Yeah.
And I like both of them. I always like the end credit scene. They're fun. They definitely built some hype. And I mean, when we saw all those variants of Kang, I'm like, I'm on board. I'm on board with all these variants. This is going to be a huge clusterfuck, and I'm going to enjoy it, because Jonathan Majors is going to be heavily involved. So
I think it's going to be a lot of fun. And I think Jonathan Majors has work cut out for him playing so many versions of this character. I just hope that we don't get like cannon fodder Kangs so much.
Yes.
We talked about how he's been killed twice. You got to stop doing that.
Yeah. Give us some weight to him. Yeah, you can't just like kill them all and like God and sort them out. But
yeah, but the Loki and Mobius scene at the end I liked a lot as well. I like the, that they're teamed up again, even though it's a different version of Mobius and he doesn't really understand the threat they're facing. I like they're in the 20s or something fun.
Yeah,
I like those. That's
gonna be a fun season when that comes out. But yeah, so this was, like we said earlier, it's the start of phase 5. So, we got some other projects coming down the line. I think, yeah, Dylan, what are your initial thoughts on this start to this part of the MCU?
Yeah, I mean, as I've said many, many times on this podcast, both this episode and others, I need Marvel to slow the fuck down, because they need to work on their visuals, and they need to give each story time to fucking breathe. The rush
Yes.
nature of their productions is becoming more and more apparent with each outing. And I think this movie is mid-tier MCU. I think it's significantly better than Thor: Love and Thunder,
Yes.
which is the most recent one we've seen. Or maybe Wakanda Forever was after that. I don't remember.
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
Point. But and you know, but it's mid-tier. It didn't need to be mid-tier. The ideas for this movie were great. Were top tier, but they didn't fully execute of them. But out of Phase 4, I'm feeling more and more that the more visually and stylistically interesting stuff is happening on Disney Plus, while the theatrical stuff feels like the least visually interesting outings, which is wild because they're the bigger budget, big screen things. But
yeah,
you know, it's very strange. And I'll also say there are a ton of plot threads going on right now, with even more being introduced in the Thunderbolts. And I'm a little worried, maybe, that it's not going to all dovetail nicely into Avengers Kang Dynasty. I just feel like there are too many different characters all doing wildly different things. Like, I mean, I think the Guardians are going to be gone by the time Kang Dynasty comes out.
I agree.
But you've got the Eternals out there doing something. You've got the Thunderbolts who are going to be doing something as well, and that's a whole cast of characters. You've got Haley Steinfeld as Kate Bishop. You've got the Ant Peoples. You've got Shuri and all the Black Panther cast. And what else we have? We got Doctor Strange and America. Wanda, I guess, is still alive because everybody's just like, oh, Wanda's going to be in the next Avengers lineup or whatever. It's like, I thought she got crushed by a mountain, but apparently not.
That witch can survive anything.
Yeah, I knew she would be back. I just think it's funny that everybody is like putting her in their Avengers lineups when she's very much oh, and you got Sam Wilson and Bucky Barnes as well.
Yes, true.
I just think back to Phase 1, right? We had 2 Iron Man movies, a Hulk movie, a Captain America movie, and a Thor movie. That's 4 characters, and then we got Black Widow and Hawkeye introduced as well. And then the cast gets bigger over time, of course, but I'm just, and maybe they don't want all the characters in Avengers movies, but it would be a very significant change in the formatting of their storytelling. So I'm curious how they're going to dovetail everything back together, or if they are. What about you? What are your thoughts for the start of Phase 5?
Yeah, I'm kind of in a similar boat. This movie, I'd probably say mid-tier across the MCU. It feels a little bit lackluster as a start. And yeah, like we were, hate to sound like a broken record, but yeah, the MCU is, I hope that they're not just going to return to the same kind of tired tropes, formulaic stories. They need to just improve some of these visuals as well. And I mean, I liked a lot of the Phase 4 projects, to be honest. Like I feel like I'm a little bit of in the minority there. Like, yes, there were some stories that weren't so great, like Black Widow, Thor 4, Eternals.
I'm with you. I didn't dislike any of them, but like, have you rewatched any of them?
No, the only things that I've rewatched have been like What If or like Loki, but that was just because like I wanted to show it to my girlfriend, and like but like I loved Spider-Man 3, Moon Knight, Werewolf by Night was, but again, really cool.
The Disney Plus stuff, the like Moon Knight was cool. Werewolf by Night was awesome. The Guardians of the Galaxy holiday special was a lot of fun too. But these are all, none of these are in the fucking theater, and their theater releases have been suffering. Black Widow especially was very forgettable. It had a great cast of characters in it, but it's a very fucking forgettable movie, which is a shame.
Yeah, it is. So yeah, I think I'm just hoping that the MCU, will take its time, slow down, and then, kind of embrace some more of these creative and nuanced stories and characters, and not, lean too heavily on those tried and tested things that they've done in the past. So
yeah. And you know what? Credit where credit is due. The Eternals was trying something. The Eternals was a very different visual style. It had a different, it was different than Marvel stuff, and people fucking hate that movie. I'm honestly pretty positive on it. It doesn't totally work, but like, this is such a delicate point to make, because critics need to be able to criticize freely, right? That's very important. And if you don't like something, you don't like it. and that opinion is valid if you can articulate it in a good way. And there were lots of problems people had with the Eternals, but I just get a feeling that if every time the Marvel Cinematic Universe does something a little bit different and it gets shit on by the hardcore Marvel fans who want the same shit over and over again, and the people who just hate Marvel and like to dunk on it when it fails, what's the incentive from the company to innovate and try new things?
True.
But I don't know. I don't want to blame fans for movies falling short, but fandom does annoy me a lot. So
it does. Yeah. Star Wars, MCU, just kind of across the board these days.
Speaking of Star Wars, you know it comes back this week, right?
Oh, this is the way.
Yeah, The Mandalorian comes back in 2 days. We'll see how that goes. But Niles, would you recommend Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania?
I would, for the most part, because of Kang and Jonathan Majors. I think he's the best part in this movie, and I'm looking forward to his future appearances, whether that's just in the King Dynasty or Loki, but other things I hope he shows up in as well. I think the rest of the movie is fine overall and it's good, but yeah, there's areas that could have been improved. What about you? Would you recommend this movie?
Yes, I would. I had fun watching it. I know we were pretty negative in this review, but I like the movie and I had fun. But that being said, all of the MCU's usual shortcomings are here and they're in full force. So if you cannot deal with them anymore, skip it. But otherwise, I'd recommend it. It's a mid-tier Marvel movie. It's fun. But with that, let me write down this time code.
Yeah. We are now going to just move into the last segment of our show for today, where we talk about other stuff that we're doing, reading, watching, playing, doing, other stuff like that. So Dylan, what have you been up to lately in entertainment?
Of course. I went back to the beginning and have been watching Cowboy Bebop. I watched like the first 2 ages ago, and now I'm 10 episodes in. Really like it. Great show.
I've also such a solid little show.
It is. Also continued watching Poker Face and The Last of Us, and I watched Tar, starring Cate Blanchett. Very, very good movie. Splendid. Yeah. I would recommend it. It's pretty long, but it's a really in-depth character study about this composer who has a very complicated and tumultuous life. I don't want to say more than that, but it's a little bit surreal sometimes, beautifully shot. It's just great. I would really recommend it. And it's nominated for Best Picture. So
yeah, that was gonna be my question. If it was, I thought I saw it nominated on there. So that's cool. Yeah, I'll need to check that out.
It's really good. What about you? What have you been watching?
So I've been watching Last of Us, as we've said earlier. So yes, that'll be our next episode. We'll be talking about that fantastic show, because it's coming to a close very soon. But yeah, it's been such a blast and so emotional. And yeah, I've been also just kind of continuing to work my way through some of these DC animated universe movies that are a little bit, more adult and stuff. I watched Justice League War. So yeah, like Dylan and I've been talking about offline, I started at the end with Apocalypse War.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of working my way back, and I'm like, why did I do that? I don't know why, but it's kind of filling the void.
You didn't know, right?
I didn't know. Yeah. I didn't know. I was really honestly looking for something, because I finished Young Justice, and I've just been looking for some kind of thing to fill the void, and these movies are doing it for the time being. So I'm going to continue with the ones that interest me, at least.
Are you still watching Attack on Titan?
I am. I just haven't really watched much more since our last episode.
Yeah.
But I'm getting through it, and it's very interesting. I'm liking it a lot. And I've also, can't remember if I mentioned this on our last episode or not, but I've been watching The Office, the Superfan episodes. And so for those of you who don't know and love The Office, NBC is now public. NBC, right? Yeah, I think so. Peacock, whatever.
Peacock,
But on Peacock, they're publishing like season by season superfan episodes, which means they're going back through the originals and they're adding in extra content. So, scenes that were deleted, or like, little bits that maybe got cut a little short, that you get a little bit more context, and there's some good little jokes and bits that get added in sometimes that are just really funny, and it's like, why did they cut that? So I've been enjoying that.
Yeah. Oh, I forgot one thing. I watched the pilot of a show called Party Down that has stars Adam Scott, and it just came back for like a reunion season, or the show got canceled ages ago, and it comes back, and my sister works on like the marketing team for that network. So
cool.
Yeah, so I watched it on her advice. I like it. The first episode was pretty funny. I'll keep watching it. It's just a sitcom show about a catering company in Hollywood.
I can dig that.
Yeah. It's a fun premise. But
I love Adam Scott and anything he does. He's a good actor.
Yeah. But like Niles said, next episode will be The Last of Us season 1, and that'll be in 2 weeks from when you're listening to this. So we will see you then. But Niles, until then, where can people find you online?
On Instagram at Niles Got No Styles. Dylan, where can people follow you?
On Instagram at DylanD1026, on Twitter at D-Day Movies, on YouTube at D-Day Movies, and on Twitch at D-Day_movies. Thank you all so much for watching or listening. If you like the show, please leave us a 5-star review on a podcast platform of your choice, or share it with a friend. Like the video on YouTube. Do whatever you want. And don't forget, we're on TikTok now. Play, pause, rewind _podcast, I think. Just search Play, Pause, Rewind in the search bar. We come up. Thank you all. Yeah.
Thanks, guys.
It was fun talking movies with you guys. Have a good one. Peace.
Bye.